Lu Hao's awakening should have ended his future, because the school labeled him a useless gatherer with no combat potential. Instead, the moment everyone decided he was worthless, a hidden collection system gave that trash class a terrifying new meaning. Anything with a source could be harvested, and the harvest could permanently raise his attributes, talents, or even produce skills. A roadside weed became his first proof, increasing his physique with a power no ordinary gatherer was supposed to possess. Within minutes, plants and insects were changing the body that his teachers had already dismissed as hopeless. The school thought Lu Hao was fighting to protect 40 bonus points, but those points represented the family he had already lost. 2 years earlier, his father Lu Yuanshan and his sister Lu Qing vanished inside a high-level dungeon and were declared national martyrs. Their sacrifice left Lu Hao with 40 entrance exam bonus points, his only meaningful advantage toward a prestigious martial arts university. That morning, homeroom teacher Wang Difa slid a document across his desk and demanded that Lu Hao sign those points away. The beneficiary was Wang Xiang, the wealthy school star who had awakened as an A-grade magic warrior. Wang Difa called the demand a contribution to school honor, pretending Lu Hao's future no longer mattered after awakening a lifestyle class. Lu Hao refused, because handing over those points would mean letting powerful strangers profit from his family's deaths. Wang Xiang dropped the polite act and offered 30,000 yuan, treating the martyr bonus like something he could simply purchase. When money failed, he threatened to block Lu Hao from work and make sure no business in Sanzhou would hire him. Wang Difa supported the threat, insisting a future warrior like Wang Xiang deserved resources more than a lowly gatherer. Lu Hao asked whether a teacher who exploited a martyr's child still deserved that title, then pushed the document back. He would not sign, no matter how much money or pressure the Wang family used against him. Wang Xiang cursed him and promised consequences, but Lu Hao walked through the school gates without giving either man another answer. Outside, anger mixed with uncertainty, because the awakening system of this world usually decided a person's ceiling for life. Mages, and similar combat classes could grow through monsters, while lifestyle classes survived through supporting work. Lu Hao had expected years of gathering herbs for other people, until a cold electronic voice sounded inside his head. The Supreme Infinite Collection system initialized and transformed his normal gathering talent into a far more dangerous ability. Infinite Collection could strip source attributes and talents from living things, instead of merely harvesting their ordinary materials. Lu Hao tested the rule on a patch of foxtail weeds growing beside the road. The first plant withered into gray dust, while a warm current entered his body and permanently raised his physique. A second successful extraction repeated the effect, proving the first result had not been luck or imagination. Each use consumed energy, but every healthy plant offered a chance to strengthen something that normally required leveling. After several foxtail weeds, Lu Hao's body already felt sturdier, his heartbeat deeper, and his breathing more controlled. His limited energy finally ran dry, revealing the first practical obstacle in his new path. The system immediately offered a solution. Money could restore energy directly, with 1 yuan converting into 1 energy point. Lu Hao spent without hesitation and watched his energy refill instantly instead of waiting hours for natural recovery. That simple exchange created a broken cycle, because money could buy more extractions, and extractions could create valuable resources. He moved to nearby mimosa plants and discovered that different sources improved different attributes. Where foxtail weeds strengthened physique, the sensitive mimosa plants increased his spirit and expanded his usable energy pool. His spirit quickly reached a level comparable to talented young mages, despite Lu Hao never casting a spell in his life. Next, he found mutated black mountain ants, feeding near mineral-rich soil, and tested Infinite Collection on them. The ants granted strength, sending compact bursts of power through his arms, shoulders, and legs. On the third ant, a critical extraction reached deeper than raw attributes and produced an F-grade strength enhancement talent. Lu Hao immediately understood the implication. A lifestyle professional had just obtained a combat talent after awakening. Another successful extraction produced the same talent, and the system offered to synthesize both copies into something stronger. The fusion created strength overload, raising the effectiveness of Lu Hao's physical attacks far beyond his original body. The colony's queen produced an even better reward, a combat technique called power gathering strike. The skill condensed his body's force into one point, multiplying the impact of a properly delivered blow. Lu Hao tested it against a football-sized rock and shattered the stone into several jagged pieces with one punch. For the first time since his family disappeared, strength gave him something more important than pride, a possible path toward finding them. The system eventually blocked further gains from the same ant species, confirming that every source had an extraction limit. Lu Hao adapted by searching the roadside for new plants instead of wasting energy on exhausted targets. Purslane mugwort, plantain, and goosegrass continued raising his spirit and constitution through different source properties. By the time his wallet emptied, his total attributes had already surpassed what most elite students possessed at level 1. His strength reached 10. Agility remained 5. Spirit rose to 20. And constitution climbed to 20. The numbers were incredible, but an empty wallet could stop infinite collection as effectively as any monster. Fortunately, the extractions had also produced bottles of perfectly pure plant essence that ordinary gatherers could never refine. Lu Hao carried those bottles to Old Wu's herb processing shop in the old district. He had worked there for years after losing his family, and Old Wu had helped keep him fed when money was scarce. Old Wu first reacted with sympathy after hearing Lu Hao had awakened as an F-class gatherer. Then Lu Hao opened a bottle of perfect plant essence, and the older man's sympathy turned into disbelief. The liquid came from common roadside plants, yet its purity was flawless enough to serve as premium potion material. Its energy content was still low, so Old Wu valued the entire batch at 10,000 yuan rather than a fortune. For Lu Hao, that payment was exactly what he needed, because every yuan could become more energy and more extractions. He left the shop with a working economy for his secret power, and no intention of explaining the true source. On his phone, classmates were celebrating Wang Xiang's impressive awakening stats and Lin Shuyao's S-class lightning affinity. Lu Hao quietly compared those numbers with his own and realized he had already moved beyond the school's visible geniuses. He kept that knowledge private, because strength revealed too early would attract questions he could not safely answer. That evening, a school notice ordered awakened students to report for a 3-day novice trial inside the Mist Plains. Lifestyle professionals were discouraged from participating, but they were not formally forbidden from entering. The dungeon meant monsters, spirit, unfamiliar species, and far richer sources than roadside weeds. He bought empty bottles, returned to his cramped home, and looked again at the faded photograph of his missing family. Everyone else accepted that Lu Yuanshan and Lu Qing were dead, but Lu Hao still refused to believe the story was complete. If infinite collection could keep breaking ordinary limits, he might eventually become strong enough to search the dungeon that took them. The next morning, Wang Difa looked furious when Lu Hao appeared at school, ready to join the trial. Wang Xiang also noticed him, realizing the supposedly useless gatherer still intended to compete for university admission. Buses carried students from several schools to the government-managed dungeon entrance outside Sanzhou. The plaza was packed with young awakeners. Teachers, equipment, and teams preparing for their first real monster hunt. Officials explained that the trial would last 3 days and issued emergency teleportation bracelets to every participant. Wang Xiang arrived in expensive dark gold armor with a huge greatsword, attracting the attention his family had paid to cultivate. Lu Hao stood out for the opposite reason, because he appeared to be the only lifestyle student entering the dungeon. Wang Xiang approached publicly and repeated his demand for the 40 martyr bonus points. His lackeys Li Chong and Xiao Hong joined in, loudly mocking Lu Hao as a gatherer who would only burden a team. Other students repeated the same logic, assuming no serious party would ever accept someone without an obvious combat class. Lu Hao ignored the crowd, knowing the strength inside his body had already invalidated their entire judgment. As schools began entering, Wang Xiang warned that teachers would not be present once they crossed the portal. The threat was obvious. Inside the Mist Plains, accidents could be arranged and witnesses could disappear. Lu Hao stepped through anyway and emerged inside a damp, fog-covered forest filled with the smell of soil and blood. Moments later, another commotion erupted as Lin Shuyao entered with several talented female teammates. She was the daughter of Sanzhou's war god Lin Xuan and the strongest young lightning mage in the city. Unlike the boys begging for her attention, Lu Hao simply turned away and started toward the quieter side of the forest. Lin Shu Yao broke from the crowd and followed, surprising everyone who knew how distant she usually acted toward classmates. She had heard about Wang Xiang's pressure and offered to ask her father to make the Wang family back off. Lu Hao rejected the offer immediately, because the Lin family was tied to the wound he still could not forgive. His father and sister had entered the fatal expedition beside Lin Xuan, but only the war god returned alive. Lu Hao had repeatedly asked what happened inside that dungeon, and Lin Xuan had refused to give him a real explanation. That silence destroyed the old closeness between both families and turned Lu Hao's gratitude into suspicion. Lin Shu Yao warned that Wang Xiang could be dangerous, but Lu Hao answered that Wang Xiang was not capable of hurting him. He walked away alone, leaving her frustrated, guilty, and unable to understand where his confidence came from. Among her teammates, Archer Su Wan watched Lu Hao more carefully than the others. Her enhanced eyesight sensed an unusually dense blood aura around the supposed lifestyle worker, something his public class could not explain. Lu Hao waited until the strongest teams moved ahead, then followed their battle noise rather than rushing to expose his own abilities. His first targets were not living monsters at all, but 3 redwood rabbit corpses abandoned after another team finished fighting. To ordinary students, those bodies were worthless scraps. To infinite collection, they were unopened containers of attributes and materials. Lu Hao placed his hand on the first rabbit and prepared to discover what monster sources could give him. Infinite collection flashed, granting rabbit bone skin, and 2 points of agility that immediately made Lu Hao's movements smoother. He extracted the remaining rabbits and watched his agility jump from 5 to 11 without killing a single monster himself. That discovery suggested an efficient strategy. Let combat teams spend their energy, then harvest the corpses they abandoned. Farther ahead, 3 more rabbit bodies produced additional agility and an F-grade flexibility talent. By the 6th rabbit, the species limit activated, forcing Lu Hao to move towards stronger prey instead of farming one source forever. Redwood rabbits were only level 1, but their oversized bodies and sudden leaps still exhausted inexperienced student teams. The first group Lu Hao observed needed all 5 members to kill only 3 of the creatures. Once the students left, they abandoned every carcass because beginner rabbit materials were barely worth carrying. Infinite collection converted that discarded value into permanent agility that no shop could sell. Each extraction cost 10 energy points, so Lu Hao tracked resource efficiency even while the gains felt effortless. The rabbit bones and pelts also entered storage, giving him saleable material alongside the invisible attribute growth. His weakest starting attribute had been agility, which made the rapid improvement especially valuable for future survival. After doubling that stat, jumping and changing direction no longer felt like movements from his old untrained body. The flexibility talent added a combat-style advantage despite coming from prey considered worthless by stronger students. The species cap prevented infinite farming, teaching Lu Hao that variety would be essential to long-term growth. The level 2 zone contained green wolves, fast predators that made ordinary student teams struggle for every kill. Lu Hao followed behind those teams, collecting discarded wolf carcasses and steadily raising agility without revealing his real combat power. One deeper extraction produced haste, a tier 1 skill that temporarily increased his movement speed by several times. When Lu Hao tested it, he crossed hundreds of meters in seconds and realized speed had become one of his strongest advantages. Green wolves moved like gray shadows and forced ordinary teams to spend far longer on each fight than against rabbits. Lu Hao kept his distance until those teams moved on, preserving the illusion that he still lacked combat capability. The wolf extractions continued improving agility, even after the rabbit source had stopped producing useful gains. Haste increased movement speed by roughly 3 times for several seconds, turning short bursts into near-instant repositioning. During the first test, wind tore past Lu Hao's ears as the forest disappeared behind him far faster than expected. That burst could close distance against ranged monsters, escape dangerous packs, or make enemy attacks miss before impact. Unlike raw agility, haste was a reusable tactical tool rather than a permanent passive improvement. Lu Hao noted the distinction. Skills, talents, and attributes were now arriving through the same collection path. Every species might therefore contain a different piece of the complete combat build he was accidentally assembling. The idea encouraged him to keep moving deeper, instead of wasting time extracting ordinary materials after a source was exhausted. The level 3 zone introduced golden bronze falcons, flying monsters whose unpredictable dives were dangerous even for coordinated teams. Again, Lu Hao let stronger groups kill first. Then appeared after they left to extract eyes. And more agility. A critical harvest granted vision enhancement. Sharpening his sight enough to notice insects. Leaf veins. And distant movement through the mist. With agility climbing into the 30s, Lu Hao now moved more like an assassin than the gatherer printed on his status. He also collected valuable falcon eyes, turning every discarded battlefield into both a training ground and a source of cash. Golden bronze falcons had wingspans around 2 meters and attacked from angles ground fighters struggled to predict. Their aerial movement made the level 3 region noticeably more dangerous than the zones Lu Hao had already crossed. Stronger student parties could kill them, but many left the bodies because carrying bulky carcasses slowed dungeon progression. The falcon eyes were different, compact, and valuable enough that Lu Hao deliberately stored as many as possible. Vision enhancement sharpened focus so dramatically that thick mist no longer erased the small environmental details around him. Lu Hao could pick out insect movement, damaged bark, and distant shapes that ordinary rookies would completely miss. That sensory advantage also reduced the risk of walking blindly into monsters while he followed other teams through fog. By then his agility had risen into the mid-30s, several times higher than the 5 points he awakened with. He had gained that transformation without publicly killing enough monsters to make anyone suspect his real progression. The scavenging phase therefore accomplished exactly what Lu Hao needed, rapid growth while stronger classmates unknowingly covered for him. At one large pile of falcon corpses, Wang Jiang finally caught up with him. Li Chong raised a bow, while Xiao Hong mocked Lu Hao for wandering alone into a zone supposedly beyond his class. Wang Xiang was preparing to act when Lin Shuyao's team appeared through the fog and interrupted the confrontation. Lightning gathered around her hands as she warned Wang Sheng not to touch Lu Hao while she was present. The Wang heir hated backing down, but challenging the war god's daughter inside a student trial carried consequences even his family respected. He ordered his men away, promising himself another opportunity once Lin Shuyao was gone. Lu Hao felt more disappointed than relieved, because he had wanted to test his new strength against the people threatening him. Lin Shuyao again invited him to travel with her team, arguing that an isolated lifestyle professional was an easy target. Her new shield-bearer Liang openly objected, and treated Lu Hao like dead weight, who would steal experience from real fighters. Lin Shuyao told Liang he could leave if he disliked her decision, forcing him to swallow the insult. Su Wan remained quiet, watching Lu Hao's aura and noticing that he already felt significantly stronger than at the entrance. That growth made no sense for someone who had apparently spent the day avoiding combat. Lu Hao rejected Lin Shuyao's invitation anyway and disappeared deeper into the forest on his own terms. Her group moved toward the level 4 zone, where fire sac moths attacked from ranges beyond Lin Shuyao's lightning. One fireball struck Liang's shield hard enough to make him cough blood and admit that several more hits could finish him. The team finally killed the moth only after Zhao Ji closed the distance, exposing how dangerous long-range monsters were for new awakeners. Lin Shuyao reminded Liang that abandoning the front line would leave everyone behind him exposed. Meanwhile, Lu reached the same zone and realized scavenging was becoming slower than simply killing monsters himself. Its status already included improved strength, its high agility, its strong spirit, its enhanced vision, its power-gathering strike. A fire sac moth detected him at range and launched a burning projectile before he could close the distance. Its enhanced vision let Lu Hao read the trajectory, and he avoided the fireball with a movement so small it barely looked deliberate. He activated haste, crossed the gap before the moth could take flight, and drove power-gathering strike into its vulnerable abdomen. The monster died from one decisive hit, giving Lu Hao experience and his first proof that he could hunt independently. Infinite Collection extracted a fire sac, more spirit, and an F-grade fire element perception talent from the corpse. 2 more moths attacked together, but Lu Hao's speed let him break their formation and kill both before they could escape. Its one extraction finally produced Fireball, a Tier 1 spell whose damage scaled with his already abnormal spirit attribute. The spell cost 10 energy points, which would normally force a rookie mage to conserve every cast carefully. Its cooldown lasted only a couple seconds, meaning Lu Hao's real bottleneck was energy rather than casting speed. His spirit attribute was already high enough that the copied spell struck harder than the moth version he learned it from. The first test left a scorched crater in a tree and confirmed that the skill was useful beyond monster hunting. Lu Hao immediately translated the energy cost into money because his system recovery made the two resources interchangeable. With thousands of yuan available, he could theoretically cast hundreds of fireballs before exhausting his financial reserve. That did not make every shot free, so he still preferred physical attacks when weaker enemies could be killed cheaply. The ability to choose between fists and magic let him save money without sacrificing combat speed. It also meant enemies could not safely specialize against one damage type after seeing only part of his toolkit. For a supposed gatherer, Lu Hao was quietly becoming far harder to classify than any normal awakening system allowed. Lu Hao formed the spell in his palm and blasted a nearby tree, tearing open the trunk with concentrated heat. The spell consumed energy and carried a short cooldown, limitations that would normally prevent a rookie mage from using it repeatedly. Lu Hao had a different limitation, because his system could refill energy with money whenever his reserves reached zero. With thousands of yuan available, every coin in his pocket effectively became ammunition for his new magic. He began hunting moths directly, switching between fists and fire, depending on which option gave him the best efficiency. Repeated extractions produced another fire element perception talent, which the system merged into a stronger fire element affinity. His fire damage and elemental control improved, even though his public class still identified him as a gatherer. After enough kills, Lu Hao reached level 2 and gained normal level up points, in addition to everything Infinite Collection had stolen. He kept moving, reached level 3, and expanded his storage, while the strongest student teams were still struggling behind him. Deeper in the forest, an elite fire sack moth appeared with a dozen ordinary guards clustered around its nest. The elite attacked with larger, faster fireballs, while its followers covered the clearing in overlapping waves of flame. Lu Hao used haste and his growing agility to weave through the barrage instead of trading damage head-on. He killed ordinary moths at close range, then spent money to refill energy and started firing his own magic without restraint. Once the guards fell, he stunned the elite with fire and finished it with a crushing physical strike. The elite extraction rewarded more spirit and burst fireball, a tier 2 area spell normally unavailable to someone at Lu Hao's level. The upgraded spell exploded across an area instead of damaging only the point it struck. That difference mattered against nests, clustered monsters, and anything relying on numbers to overwhelm a single fighter. Ordinary students generally needed much higher levels before learning a second-tier combat skill safely. Lu Hao acquired one while still only level 3 because Infinite Collection ignored the normal learning route. The elite moth therefore gave him a progression jump much larger than the experience from killing it. He tested the new explosion repeatedly, comparing how distance and timing affected nearby targets. The wider blast increased energy efficiency whenever several enemies stood close enough to be hit together. It also created more battlefield noise, making secrecy harder if other teams approached from nearby zones. Lu Hao responded by pushing deeper, instead of staying where slower students could catch up and observe him. The decision kept his strongest techniques away from witnesses while moving him toward rarer sources. His basic fireball was replaced automatically, giving him explosive damage far beyond what the other students expected from a rookie. Lu Hao spent the next stretch of the trial testing that spell against more monsters while carefully tracking energy costs. By evening, he was already approaching level 4 and had become comfortable switching between physical and magical attacks. Then the mist plains changed as thick night fog rolled across the forest and reduced ordinary visibility to almost nothing. Lu Hao entered the level 5 zone anyway, because the deeper areas still contained untouched spirit herbs. A silver-white plant glowing beneath a withered tree caught his enhanced sight and stopped him immediately. He recognized silver needle grass from his years at Old Wu's shop and used Infinite Collection on a genuine spirit herb. Old Wu's shop experience let Lu Hao identify medicinal plants that many combat students would walk past without recognizing. That practical knowledge finally connected his difficult years of part-time work directly to the advantages of his new system. Perfect extraction produced liquid rather than a damaged herb, preserving the useful essence with almost no impurity. The spirit gain arrived at the same time. So one plant increased both Lu Hao's personal power and his future income. This was fundamentally more efficient than selling low-value monster pelts that occupied far more storage. Lu Hao therefore began prioritizing herbs whenever enhanced vision or smell revealed a promising trace. Fluorescent mushrooms later produced vitality-related gains, proving medicinal species could influence different attributes, just like roadside plants. Its enhanced smell became especially valuable. After darkness reduced visibility and made ordinary visual tracking unreliable. The deeper he traveled, the stronger and rarer the spiritual sense became, giving him a reason to ignore the safer camp schedule. By following those scents rather than marked routes, Lu Hao found resources the dungeon's strongest combat teams never knew existed. The harvest produced perfect spirit liquid, and 3 spirit points, a far richer result than anything roadside plants could provide. Lu Hao realized the dungeon's medicinal resources might be worth even more than its monster materials. A level 5 spirit hound attacked next, but his increased speed and power-gathering strike shattered its defenses at close range. The corpse yielded scent-related material and more strength, adding another source type to his growing collection record. Further extractions from herbs and monsters pushed Lu Hao toward level 4 while building a stockpile of perfect liquids. A later critical harvest granted enhanced smell, letting him track scents through fog that blocked even enhanced eyesight. That ability transformed the night forest from dangerous terrain into a treasure map only Lu Hao could properly read. Around 8 in the evening, most students were already retreating toward camp because the fog made deeper hunting too risky. Lu Hao continued alone, unwilling to surrender rare resources that appeared only during this short annual trial. After another hour, he reached level 5 and realized he had wandered much farther than he originally intended. Then enhanced smell detected an unusually concentrated spiritual scent coming from somewhere beyond the visible path. Lu Hao followed it into a small valley where the trail seemed to terminate against a sheer cliff. Behind hanging vines, enhanced vision revealed a narrow opening that ordinary students could easily miss. The spiritual energy leaking from the hidden tunnel was too dense to ignore, so Lu Hao crawled inside despite the risk. The passage descended for hundreds of meters before opening into a cavern large enough to hold an enormous crowd. Thousands of tiny glowing plants covered the walls and ceiling, making the underground chamber resemble a field of stars. Lu Hao recognized the species as a common ingredient for low-level energy potions, but the quantity was extraordinary. The hidden cave had apparently remained untouched for years, accumulating a resource stockpile no trial team knew existed. The tunnel leading there descended several hundred meters, which explained why surface teams had never stumbled into it accidentally. Inside, glowing herb filaments covered stone walls and ceiling until the cavern looked like a buried night sky. The plants were not individually rare, but the untouched quantity transformed ordinary ingredients into a serious fortune. Lu Hao first scanned the entire chamber for monsters, refusing to let excitement override basic survival discipline. Only after confirming the silence did he begin harvesting the nearest patch with infinite collection. Every successful extraction left the plant drained, while perfect liquid entered storage without the contamination common processing created. The first several herbs still produced spirit points before the direct attribute reward finally reached its species limit. Lu Hao kept harvesting afterward because the market value remained even when personal stat gains stopped. His arms eventually ached from the repeated motion, a rare reminder that his body still experienced ordinary fatigue. The cavern changed his plan from merely surviving the trial into maximizing every minute before the realm closed. Infinite collection turned the first plant into perfect essence and granted another permanent increase to Lu Hao's spirit. Several more plants continued raising his attribute until the species limit stopped the direct stat gains. The perfect medicinal essence, however, kept accumulating in his storage with every successful harvest. Lu Hao spent hours stripping sections of the cavern, eventually collecting hundreds of portions that could be sold or brewed. His level 5 status now carried combat-worthy strength, assassin-like agility, mage-level spirit, an unusually high constitution. Back at the student camp, The mood was completely different, as injured teams counted losses and rationed their remaining potions. Many mages had already burned through most of their energy supplies, making another 2 days of fighting look increasingly difficult. School officials also counted missing participants who had either teleported out early or failed to return. When someone noticed Lu Hao was absent, several students laughed and assumed the gatherer had already become monster food. Wang Xiang enjoyed that assumption because Lu Hao's death would remove the only person legally entitled to those 40 bonus points. He had reached level 4 and believed he was leading the trial, unaware that Lu Hao had quietly passed him. Late that night, a lone figure finally emerged from the deep fog and walked toward the camp without visible injuries. The mocking stopped when students recognized Lu Hao returning from territory that most teams had been afraid to approach. Wang Xiang's satisfaction disappeared, but Lu Hao ignored him and chose a dark corner away from the crowd. His storage contained more than 800 portions of medicinal essence, yet his remaining cash had to become dangerously low. Without money, he could not refill energy fast enough to keep extracting through the remaining days. Leaving early would protect his gains, but it would also waste the strongest opportunity he had ever received. Then Lu Hao remembered the practical potion-making skills he had learned while working for Old Wu. The harvested spirit liquid already provided the expensive ingredient. Wild plants could supply crude catalysts for immediate use energy potions. Lu Hao decided he would manufacture his own recovery supply inside the dungeon, rather than surrendering the trial. Lu Hao gathered simple catalyst plants near camp, mixed them with the spirit liquid, and produced a crude blue energy potion. He drank the first bottle himself and felt roughly 100 energy points return within minutes. That confirmed the formula worked well enough for a dungeon where long-term storage and perfect refinement did not matter. He calculated that a large batch would give him enough recovery to keep using infinite collection through the final day. While Lu Hao worked, classmate Xiao Dapang noticed the bottles and wandered over with obvious curiosity. The two had shared a desk before awakening, although their lives outside school could hardly have been more different. Lu Hao survived by studying and working, while Xiao Dapang came from a newly wealthy family and treated life much more casually. Xiao Dapang had awakened as a B-rank ranged combat professional and had already discovered how quickly dungeon fighting exhausted energy. When he asked to buy 10 potions, Lu Hao set the price at 1,000 yuan each to discourage casual bargaining. Xiao Dapang paid immediately, because inside the dungeon an available energy potion was worth more than its normal store price. Watching the transaction gave Lu Hao another idea. Selling recovery items could finance his system far more efficiently than using them himself. One bottle could sell for enough money to purchase many times the energy Lu Hao would gain by drinking it. Xiao Dapang volunteered to act as salesman, confident that his family's business instincts were more useful than standing around camp. Lu Hao handed him a batch and let him keep whatever markup he could negotiate above the agreed price. The first 30 bottles disappeared almost immediately as exhausted students crowded around the unexpected supply. Xiao Dapang returned with 30,000 yuan and demanded more product while the temporary monopoly still existed. Lu Hao gave him another batch, but added one condition that mattered more than profit. He could sell to anyone in camp except Wang Xiang and the people directly supporting him. Xiao Dapang hesitated, only briefly before accepting, even though refusing the Wang family carried real consequences in Sanzhou. Students quickly formed a line, complaining about the inflated price while still pushing forward with cash in their hands. Lin Shuyao's group also bought potions after discovering how badly the first day had drained their energy reserves. When Wang Xiang's lackeys arrived to purchase the remaining stock, Xiao Dapang refused them in front of the entire crowd. Li Chong and Xiao Hong threatened his family, but Xiao Dapang stood by the agreement and sent them away empty-handed. Wang Xiang reacted by kicking apart his campfire and directing his anger toward Lu Hao rather than the salesman. He ordered Li Chong to follow Lu Hao the next morning and kill him once they were isolated. Wang Xiang wanted the body left among monster remains, so teachers would interpret the death as a failed solo hunt. The plan depended on everyone believing Lu Hao lacked combat power and therefore had no chance against Li Chong. Li Chong accepted because his ranged class gave him confidence that the attack could be completed without close combat. Neither conspirator knew Lu Hao's agility had already surpassed the point where ordinary rookie projectiles could threaten him reliably. They also had no knowledge of Burst Fireball, because Lu Hao had avoided exposing his strongest spell around school witnesses. The assassination therefore rested entirely on public information that Infinite Collection had already made obsolete. Wang Xiang remained focused on university rankings, rather than understanding why his supposedly weak target kept surviving. His fixation on the 40 bonus points turned every failed pressure tactic into another reason for escalation. For Lu Hao, the conflict was no longer merely about admission once the Wang family began arranging lethal attacks. The dungeon would become the first place where he could answer their violence, without a teacher controlling the outcome. The body could be abandoned near monsters, turning a deliberate murder into something that looked like a dungeon accident. By the end of the trading session, he had sold around 200 bottles and collected roughly 200,000 yuan. Xiao Depang marked up Lu Hao's agreed price, selling some bottles for around 1,500 yuan during peak demand. Students complained loudly, but kept buying, because exhausted mages had no convenient alternative inside the sealed trial. The female priest on Lin Shuyao's team purchased a substantial batch to keep their formation functional the next day. Xiao Depeng even added a small free extra when serving Lin Shuyao, hoping to earn goodwill with the city's famous genius. Lu Hao cared less about the social gesture than about converting low-cost potion ingredients into system fuel. Every 1,000 yuan of sales represented far more energy through direct system recovery than one potion restored by drinking. That exchange rate made selling most of the batch mathematically better than consuming it himself. Xiao Depeng's commission rewarded the sales work. Lu Hao had no interest in performing personally. Their arrangement also showed why the two could cooperate, despite coming from completely different backgrounds. Hao supplied rare value, while Xiao Depeng understood people pricing. An opportunity well enough to monetize it quickly. Xiao Depeng also earned a large commission, creating an unexpected partnership that benefited both of them. When Lu Hao asked why he risked offending Wang Xiang, Xiao Depeng finally admitted that business instinct mattered more than morality. Everyone else saw Lu Hao as a weak gatherer, but Xiao Depeng believed the skills he had witnessed suggested much larger future value. He warned Lu Hao that Wang Xiang was actively targeting him, then left him to rest before the next morning's hunt. Lu Hao went to sleep with enough money to stop treating every spell and extraction like a financial emergency. At dawn, he slipped away from camp and headed directly toward the level 6 region instead of lingering around weaker monsters. His agility had climbed so high that ordinary mountain terrain barely slowed him, even before activating haste. Behind him, Li Chong followed with a heavy bow, confident that an isolated lifestyle worker would be an easy target. After several minutes, that confidence faded because Li Chong had to push himself hard just to keep Lu Hao in sight. The deeper they traveled, the more dangerous the surrounding monsters became, making a prolonged chase increasingly risky. Lu Hao eventually disappeared behind a ridge, forcing Li Chong to sprint forward before he lost his target completely. When Li Chong reached the other side, Lu Hao calmly stepped from cover and asked why he was working so hard to follow. The ranger stopped pretending and said Wang Xiang had ordered the attack because Lu Hao refused to know his place. Li Chong drew his bow, activated snipe, and released an arrow from what he considered an ideal killing distance. Lu Hao shifted slightly and let the projectile pass his shoulder before it buried itself deep inside a tree. Li Chong fired again, believing the first miss had to be an accident. This time he watched Lu Hao deliberately avoid the arrow with a movement so easy that fear immediately replaced arrogance. Li's snipe skill was designed to maximize accuracy and power at the distance he had chosen. Missing once could be blamed on nerves, but watching Lu Hao evade the second shot destroyed that excuse. The ranger finally recognized that his target had known about the pursuit and deliberately selected the isolated clearing. Lu Hao's calm posture also made clear that he had stopped because he wanted the confrontation, not because he was trapped. Li Chong tried to process that reversal while reaching for another arrow, but haste erased the remaining distance first. The difference in speed meant Lu Hao could choose whether the fight stayed ranged or became physical. Once his fist landed, the broken ribs demonstrated that agility was not the only hidden attribute Li Chong had underestimated. The emergency bracelet became the ranger's only realistic defense before the incoming fire spell completed the exchange. Its shield was designed specifically to prevent student deaths, allowing Li Chong to survive damage his own body could not withstand. Escaping through school equipment saved him, but it also gave him first-hand knowledge that Wang Shang's target was no longer weak. Lu Hao told him that 2 shots were enough and activated his own speed before Li Chong could prepare another attack. The distance between them disappeared so quickly that the ranger barely understood Lu Hao had moved. One punch slammed into Li Chong's ribs, breaking several bones and launching him backward across the clearing. As he flew, Li Chong saw a dark red fireball condensing in Lu Hao's hand, and finally understood how badly he had miscalculated. He smashed his emergency teleportation bracelet before the follow-up attack could reach his unprotected body. The bracelet created a defensive barrier at the last possible moment, and Lu Hao's burst fireball exploded against its surface. Li Chong vanished from the dungeon burned and broken, but alive because the school equipment activated before the barrier failed. Lu Hao did not chase a target who had already escaped the realm, and instead continued towards stronger monsters. Outside the portal, teachers found Li Chong badly injured and asked what kind of beast had caused the burns. He admitted Lu Hao was responsible, but avoided explaining that Wang Xiang had sent him to commit murder first. The school officials struggled to believe a lifestyle professional had nearly killed an A-rank ranger. Li Chong understood what they did not. Speed, strength, and firepower already exceeded everything his public class suggested. Back inside, Lu Hao entered a stone forest inhabited by ghost-faced spiders that attacked through nearly invisible silk. One spider caught his ankle, but burst fireball exploited its weakness to fire before the creature could capitalize. The monster attempted to flee after the first blast, so Lu Hao pursued and finished it with more explosions. Its infinite collection extracted spirit from the corpse, making his already strong magic scale even higher. With money available for immediate recovery, Lu Hao stopped conserving energy and became a mobile artillery platform. Groups of spiders were burned down before their psychic screams or ambush tactics could meaningfully threaten him. A critical extraction from one corpse produced spirit sensing, broadening his awareness beyond a single elemental affinity. Ghost-faced spiders attacked with hidden silk and mental shrieks, making them dangerous to students focused only on physical movement. Lu Hao's high spirit reduced the effect of those psychic attacks, enough that he could keep casting through the discomfort. Fire was naturally effective against the spiders, so burst fireball punished both their bodies and the webs controlling the terrain. The stone forest repeatedly flashed orange as Lu Hao cleared packs faster than they could coordinate ambushes. Spirit sensing felt different from fire element affinity because it responded to magical presence without belonging to one element. That broader awareness suggested future extractions could eventually open spell types far beyond the fire path he currently used. Blood soul grass appeared in shaded cracks, where ordinary students might have missed the muted red glow. Perfect extraction converted each valuable herb directly into usable essence instead of risking damage during manual gathering. Lu Hao drank some of the vitality-rich liquid when immediate stat growth mattered more than saving every portion for sale. The result reinforced his rule that valuable resources should be judged by strategic use rather than market price alone. The new talent made Lu Hao more receptive to magical and mental phenomena that ordinary physical fighters might miss. He also found blood soul grass hidden among the rocks and extracted perfect essence, along with additional vitality. More herbs followed, allowing him to raise his life-related attributes, while continuing to grind monsters for experience. The combination of spell damage, infinite, paid recovery, and extraction rewards made every fight advance several goals at once. Within a short stretch, Lu Hao gained multiple levels and reached level 8 far ahead of the trial's normal pace. He pushed from the spider territory into the level 7 zone, controlled by iron bone apes. These large monsters could smash trees apart during a charge, yet their size made them easy targets for repeated fireballs. Lu Hao emptied his energy pool quickly, bought an instant refill, and continued firing without the downtime normal mages required. An hour of constant bombardment turned the ape territory into a graveyard and raised Lu Hao to level 11. Iron bone apes stood more than twice human height and could break thick trunks during a straightforward charge. Their raw physical threat was serious, but they lacked a reliable answer to sustained long-range magical bombardment. Lu Hao's spirit had climbed above 50 by then, making every burst fireball hit much harder than its base description implied. He emptied hundreds of energy points quickly and refilled them before the apes could benefit from his temporary exhaustion. Most mages would have been forced to stop, drink potions, or wait after using a comparable volume of spells. Lu Hao instead maintained nearly continuous pressure because system recovery happened immediately once he paid the cost. Reaching level 11 also changed the normal progression formula by increasing the free points granted per future level. That meant his system-driven growth and ordinary leveling were both accelerating instead of competing for the same reward. The second-tier Bloodbone Ginseng was valuable enough that discovering it mattered almost as much as another monster pack. By the time Lu Hao left the zone, stronger teams behind him were entering battlefields he had already stripped of their best rewards. Past level 10, normal leveling began granting more free attribute points, adding another growth source on top of infinite collection. He also discovered a second-tier Bloodbone Ginseng, a valuable medicinal ingredient with unusually strong vitality. By then, teams behind him were beginning to notice that entire zones contained almost no living monsters or untouched herbs. Students who expected subtraction were being forced deeper simply because someone had already cleared their planned hunting grounds. In the level 6 stone forest, one team discovered dozens of charred spider bodies and could not imagine what kind of party caused it. Lin Shuyao's elite group found the same destruction and initially suspected another hidden team was moving ahead of them. Suwan examined the damage and noticed that fire magic caused most of the kills, eliminating Wang Xiang as the likely explanation. She also kept seeing corpses drained in the same strange way she had noticed around Lu Hao earlier. The possibility that he was involved sounded ridiculous even to her, so she kept the suspicion private. Wang Xiang's team suffered even more because their missing ranger left them short-handed against monsters above their comfortable level. They fought several iron bone apes, spending expensive potions and taking serious injuries just to find enough experience. Wang Zhang blamed Li Chong for disappearing and assumed Lin Shuyao was responsible for clearing the zones first. He had no idea the student he ordered killed was the reason his entire progression plan was collapsing. Lu Hao continued forward, spending tens of thousands of energy points, because every refill was now financially manageable. Near noon, he paused briefly for bread and water before advancing into the level 8 region. The sudden absence of ambient animal noise warned him that something nearby was hiding rather than simply absent. Enhanced vision caught a tiny movement in what looked like an ordinary gray rock. A shadow chameleon launched a nearly invisible attack, but Lu Hao avoided it and answered with rapid burst fireballs. The level 8 monster died before its camouflage could create a second opening. Several more chameleons produced mental attributes, and one critical extraction granted a Tier 1 skill called pseudo-disguise. The skill could hide Lu Hao's visible information and slightly alter his appearance, exactly what a secretive, overpowered student needed. He immediately understood its defensive value. Concealing strength could be more important than adding another attack. After clearing the zone and harvesting spirit grass, Lu Hao reached level 13 and continued toward the level 9 monsters. Bladed mantises were famous for explosive speed, but his long-range firepower prevented most of them from closing the distance. By nightfall, he had moved so far ahead that returning to the central camp would waste hours of valuable hunting time. Lu Hao chose to remain in the deep zone, where the fog grew dense enough to hide even experienced teams. Somewhere nearby, Lin Shuyao's group made the same decision for a very different reason. Her pride would not let her retreat, while the unknown powerhouse ahead of them continued pushing deeper. Lin Shuyao's team eventually admitted the level 9 and level 10 monsters were too dangerous to fight blindly inside the night fog. Lin Shuyao took first watch, still frustrated that an unidentified student had cleared every zone faster than her elite group. From the darkness, Lu Hao observed their camp while pseudo-disguise concealed the identity he wanted to keep hidden. A faint movement betrayed his position, and Lin Shuyao immediately called into the fog before following his retreating silhouette. She froze when the face she saw was Lu Hao's, because a gatherer should never have survived this deep alone. Lin Shuyao demanded that he return to her camp before a high-level monster killed him. Lu Hao answered that he could choose his own path and had no intention of following her orders. She invoked his missing family, arguing that Lu Yuanshan and Lu Qing would want him alive rather than proving a point. Before the argument could continue, a deep roar rolled through the fog and shook the ground beneath them. An elite iron armor bearer emerged, far stronger than the normal level 10 monsters expected in that region. Lin Shuyao turned pale but stepped in front of Lu Hao and ordered him to run while she held the beast. She could have activated her teleportation bracelet, yet feared the bear would simply chase Lu Hao after she disappeared. Lu Hao obeyed in appearance, vanishing into the fog so quickly that Lin Shuyao believed he had abandoned her. The decision hurt her, but she still remained and raised a crackling lightning defense against the charging elite. One paw shattered her lightning armor and sent her across the ground with blood at the corner of her mouth. The blast alerted her teammates, who rushed toward the fight before the bear could immediately finish her. Their shield bearer Liang was ordered to take aggro, but terror broke his nerve when the bear charged directly toward him. Instead of raising his shield, Liang rolled away and fled into the mist, leaving the fragile backline completely exposed. The bear smashed aside the assassin and archer, then turned back toward the injured Lin Shuyao. At the moment the group believed the next strike would kill her, a blazing projectile cut through the fog. Burst fireball slammed into the elite bear, wrapping its armored body in flame and forcing its attention away from the students. A disguised figure followed the spell at impossible speed and drove a concentrated punch into the bear's ribs. The impact broke bone and hurled the enormous monster through several trees before it crashed into the ground. Lin Shuyao and the others stared at the stranger, unable to connect his speed, strength and magic to any normal student. Lu Hao fired again before the bear recovered, then closed the distance and kept striking while the flames disrupted its defense. The rescue revealed 3 combat paths in seconds. Explosive magic, extreme movement speed, and overwhelming close-range strength. That combination left Lin Shuyao's team unable to guess what class the disguised stranger could possibly possess. Their own formation depended on separate specialists for range damage, healing, assassination, and defense. Yan appeared to perform several of those roles alone, while still being a student inside the same beginner trial. Liang's earlier retreat looked even worse afterward because the mysterious stranger had faced the elite without protective gear. Suwan's hands continued shaking around her bow after the fight, despite being one of the calmer members of the group. The priest could barely reconcile the dying bear with how helpless their entire team had been moments earlier. Lin Shuyao's fascination came from gratitude and from realizing her supposed first-place status was already false. She had entered the trial expecting S-class talent to separate her from every other student in Sanzhou. Yan's appearance proved that someone outside the public rankings had already created a much larger gap. Because pseudo-disguise altered his appearance, the rescued students saw only a mysterious expert standing beside the corpse. Lin Shuyao checked his visible level before Lu Hao hit it and nearly stopped breathing when she saw level 13. She finally understood that the destruction across the mist plains had not been caused by an elite team. One student had been clearing the zones alone, while every famous school genius struggled to keep pace. When Lin Shuyao asked his name, Lu Hao gave only the alias Yan and dragged the bear away into the darkness. Suwan quietly mentioned that the stranger's shape and presence reminded her of Lu Hao. The others laughed at the comparison because they had just watched Lu Hao supposedly flee before the bear attacked. To them, one boy was a cowardly gatherer, while Yan was the strongest student they had ever seen. Even Lin Shuyao accepted that separation, believing Lu Hao had escaped while another man returned to save them. Once he was safely out of sight, Lu Hao removed the disguise and dropped the heavy bear carcass. He had never truly abandoned the group. He had simply concealed himself before returning with power he was unwilling to expose. Their misunderstanding did not bother him because reputation mattered far less than preserving the secret behind infinite collection. The elite corpse mattered much more, since stronger sources had repeatedly produced better extraction results. Lu Hao placed his hand against the armored fur and triggered infinite collection. The bear granted several strength points before a critical extraction reached the deeper source hidden inside its body. A new strength talent appeared, and the system recognized that Lu Hao already possessed compatible enhancements. He fused them, rather than keeping overlapping effects, creating a stronger talent called Strength Eruption. The upgrade pushed his physical attack effectiveness to roughly 3 times its ordinary output under the talent's effect. He now carried the mobility of an assassin, physical force of a warrior, of a mage, and durability from repeated vitality extractions. That balanced growth gave him confidence, but his thoughts returned to the family mystery that required far more power than school competition. Lu Yuanshan had been a war god, and Lu Qing had possessed extraordinary talent before both disappeared inside the same expedition. Whatever trapped people at their level would not be solved by becoming the strongest teenager in Sanzhou. Lu Hao found a quiet cave, rested briefly, and prepared to use the final trial day for another aggressive sweep. By morning, the mist plains had become chaotic because his previous clearing routes had distorted every other team's progression. Some students found almost no monsters, while others entered harder zones prematurely and were forced to teleport out after injuries. Lu Hao ignored the wider confusion and finished harvesting the edge of the level 9 territory. He then entered the level 10 region, where normal iron armor bears offered more strength and better materials. Several successful extractions added another large increase to his physical attribute, even without producing a new skill. By noon, he had collected more than a dozen high-value spirit herbs, including several second-tier plants. The experience pushed him to level 14, far beyond the best normal result ever expected from the beginner realm. His storage held hundreds of perfect first-tier medicinal liquids and several rarer second-tier portions. Strength sat in the 40s. Agility in the 40s. Spirit in the 70s. And constitution approached 100. He also had dozens of unallocated points earned through leveling rather than source extraction. Instead of spreading them evenly, Lu Hao focused on the two attributes that directly drove his current damage. He placed part of the reserve into strength and poured the rest into spirit. That decision pushed strength above 60 and spirit beyond 120, making burst fireball even more destructive. Lu Hao left agility and constitution untouched because both attributes were already sufficient for the current dungeon's threats. Concentrating points into damage shortened fights, indirectly reducing the danger and money spent on repeated recovery. His storage also held hundreds of first-tier liquids, several second-tier extracts, monster materials, and valuable specialty parts. The hall gave him enough capital to continue using infinite collection outside the controlled school environment. Even so, Lu Hao chose not to display any of those gains when the portal returned everyone to the plaza. His greatest protection remained the assumption that a gatherer could not possibly possess serious combat ability. The level 14 reading threatened that protection because level itself could be seen without specialized concealment. Pseudo-disguise solved the immediate problem by copying a nearby mage's public information rather than inventing impossible values. The choice of a fire mage was deliberate because witnesses already knew some kind of fire attack had injured Li Chong. Revealing one believable secret gave Lu Hao a cover story strong enough to hide the far more dangerous infinite collection. The numbers were absurd for level 14. Yet Lu Hao understood that older professionals in the real world remained far stronger. His advantage was growth speed, not invincibility, and protecting that advantage still required restraint. Elsewhere, Lin Shuyao's team waited for the trial to end while continuing to discuss the mysterious Yan. Lin Shuyao wanted to thank him properly, while her teammates remained fascinated by a hero who had appeared without explanation. The portal finally activated and began returning thousands of students to the dungeon entrance outside Sanzhou. Wang Xiang emerged at level 8, an excellent result that felt worthless to him when Lin Shuyao appeared at level 9. The crowd immediately celebrated her as the likely first-place student of the year. Wang Xiang blamed Lu Hao for his own setback because Li Chong's disappearance had weakened his team during the deepest fights. Lin Shuyao barely noticed Wang Xiang and instead searched the crowd for the disguised expert who had saved her. Lu Hao returned quietly and tried to move toward the edge of the plaza before anyone inspected him carefully. Xiao Depang spotted him first and shouted in relief, having worried after Lu Hao failed to return to camp. Then Xiao Depang instinctively checked his classmate's status and blurted out the number he saw. The number Xiao Depang shouted was level 14. Nearby students turned toward Lu Hao at once, checked for themselves, and confirmed the impossible reading before he could react. Whispers became shouting as more people pushed closer to see the student who had broken the trial's expected leveling ceiling. Lu Hao had spent days hiding his combat methods, but one careless status check threatened to expose everything in seconds. Pseudo-disguise gave him a solution, although he needed a believable public identity rather than another mysterious face. He touched a nearby fire mage and used the concealment ability to imitate that student's visible information. When the next wave of curious students checked Lu Hao, they saw only a level 6 fire mage instead of a level 14 gatherer. The first witnesses insisted the number had changed, while newcomers accused them of imagining things after an exhausting dungeon run. Then students from Lu Hao's school recognized another contradiction. He had awakened publicly as a lifestyle professional, not a mage. That rumor spread even faster because changing from gatherer to combat class seemed impossible under normal awakening rules. School principals pushed through the crowd, having already heard Li Chong claim that Lu Hao used fire against him. Principal Jian directly asked whether Lu Hao had somehow developed a second talent inside the dungeon. Lu Hao chose a partial truth, explaining that he awakened fire affinity after entering, and had learned a basic fire spell. He created a small flame in his palm, giving everyone a visible explanation for Li Chong's burns without revealing infinite collection. The principals immediately concluded that Lu Hao possessed dual classes, an extremely rare phenomenon that drew instant excitement. Another principal checked the visible details and pointed out that the supposed sex talent was only a low-grade fire affinity. The excitement cooled because a gatherer plus weak fire mage appeared to have almost no meaningful class synergy. Students quickly shifted from awe to mockery, calling the rare dual awakening a wasted miracle instead of a path to greatness. The crowd's disappointment worked in Lu Hao's favor because people stopped asking how he had survived the deeper zones. A weak second talent also explained fire use, without suggesting the enormous spirit attribute powering his real burst fireball. Principal Jian's embarrassment helped the cover, since school leadership no longer wanted to keep spotlighting the awkward discovery. Lin Shuyao's team heard only the public explanation and mentally separated Lu Hao even farther from Yan. Zhao Ji considered the second awakening mildly lucky, but nowhere near enough to change her opinion of his character. Su Wan remained uncertain because the public information still failed to explain the aura she sensed inside the trial. Wang Xiang ignored the technical details and focused on the legal consequence of Lu Hao becoming combat qualified. A registered combat candidate had a direct claim to compete, making his martyr bonus points harder to seize through school paperwork. The argument that Lu Hao could never use those points had therefore collapsed in front of some school administrators. The Wang family shifted from manipulating academic rules toward using Li Chong's injuries as a criminal accusation. Lu Hao accepted the ridicule without argument, because being underestimated was exactly the protection he wanted. Principal Jian offered awkward encouragement and allowed the crowd to believe Lu Hao was merely an unusually lucky low-tier combatant. Across the plaza, Lin Shuyao heard the explanation and decided Lu Hao's second awakening still had nothing to do with Yan. Wang Xiang reacted differently, because even a weak combat class made Lu Hao legally eligible for the university entrance examination. That destroyed the excuse Wang Xing had used to justify taking the 40 martyr bonus points. His face twisted as he realized Lu Hao had survived the dungeon, gained combat eligibility, and preserved the points. Before he could invent another school-based attack, a message arrived confirming that Li Chong had survived and returned with help. Wang Xiang's expression changed from fury to satisfaction when he learned the investigation bureau was approaching the plaza. He pointed at Lu Hao and announced that the gatherer was about to answer for attacking a classmate inside the trial. Wang Xiang blocked Lu Hao's path and declared that the investigation bureau would detain him for maliciously attacking Li Chong. Principal Jian tried to stop the confrontation from becoming a legal case, but Wang Xiang insisted the matter involved attempted murder. Lu Hao turned to leave anyway, forcing Wang Xiang and Xiao Hong to physically move into his path. Their level 8 auras drew the crowd back, yet Lu Hao remained calm because neither opponent understood his real strength. Before anyone attacked, several uniformed investigators entered the plaza, beside the heavily bandaged Li Chong and 2 Wang family representatives. The group was led by Deputy Director Fong, an official whose attitude made his alliance with the Wang family immediately obvious. Third, Uncle Wang accused Lu Hao of viciously ambushing Li Chong inside the dungeon without provocation. Li Chong supported that story while carefully omitting the fact that he had followed Lu Hao under orders to kill him. Deputy Director Fong announced that Lu Hao was suspected of malicious assault and would be taken away for detention and review. The accusation carried consequences beyond a temporary night in custody because the university examination was approaching. A prolonged review could make Lu Hao miss registration windows, even if investigators eventually admitted the evidence was weak. That timing was exactly why the threat mattered to Wang Xiang, whose real objective remained the entrance exam advantage. Li Chong's bandages created a powerful visual story for bystanders who had never seen what happened inside the dungeon. Students saw the injured ranger first, and naturally assumed the nearly unharmed gatherer must be the aggressor. Fong never asked why an A-rank ranged fighter had been alone in a high-level zone, following Lu Hao. He also showed no interest in checking whether Li Qing fired first, or whether the encounter involved self-defense. The investigation was moving directly toward detention, rather than toward reconstructing the actual sequence of events. Lu Hao recognized the pattern, and understood that ordinary explanation would not matter while the Bureau served the stronger family. That realization was why he stayed quiet, instead of begging officials who had already decided what conclusion they wanted. Missing the upcoming examination could destroy Lu Hao's university path, even if the Bureau eventually released him. Principal Jian reminded the investigators that Lu Hao was a martyr's descendant and deserved a fair investigation before punishment. Fong twisted that argument around, claiming a martyr's child should be held to an even higher legal standard. Wang Xiang watched with open satisfaction because official detention could accomplish what his attacks inside the dungeon had failed to do. Two investigators stepped toward Lu Hao, confident that a student with weak public talents could offer no meaningful resistance. Xiao Depang suddenly moved between them and demanded evidence beyond Li Chong's accusation. He invoked the legal right to provide a family guarantee and announced that the Xiao family would stand behind Lu Hao. The decision surprised everyone, because defending Lu Hao could turn a school grudge into a conflict between powerful local families. Fong hesitated, unwilling to create unnecessary problems with the wealthy Xiao family over a case he knew was politically motivated. Then Lin Shu Yao stepped forward and announced that the Lin family would also guarantee Lu Hao. Her teammates objected after watching him apparently flee from the bear, but she still remembered the debt between their families. Two influential guarantees should have made immediate detention difficult, and the Wang representatives began reconsidering how far to push. Wang Defa intervened before the advantage could shift completely away from his nephew. As Lu Hao's homeroom teacher, he claimed the student was isolated, hateful, violent, and likely to attack Li Chong again. That statement created a pretext to deny bail on public safety grounds despite the Xiao and Lin guarantees. Deputy Director Fong seized the opportunity and ordered his men to proceed with the arrest. Wang Defa told the students supporting Lu Hao that they were too young and naive to understand how dangerous he supposedly was. Around the plaza, many students assumed Lu Hao's future had finally ended under a combination of money and official authority. Lu Hao still said almost nothing, because he was privately calculating how he would respond if the investigators actually tried to seize him. He no longer saw himself as helpless, and escaping into the mountains was preferable to surrendering his future to a rigged process. Before the officers reached him, a voice rolled across the plaza with enough authority to silence the entire confrontation. War god Lin Xuan asked whether young students lacked the power to protect Lu Hao, and whether his own name would be enough. The crowd immediately parted, as Sanzhou's strongest fighter walked toward the investigators with controlled, unmistakable pressure. Deputy Director Fong lost his arrogance at once and lowered his head before a man whose influence extended far beyond the city. Lin Xuan asked whether the Bureau had a private tool for local families instead of an organization enforcing public order. His arrival changed the power balance because Deputy Director Fong could intimidate students, but not a nationally respected war god. The same officials who had dismissed Principal Jian's objections immediately softened their voices under Lin Xuan's attention. Third Uncle Wang also stopped presenting Li Qing's accusation as unquestionable fact once personal consequences became possible. Lin Xuan did not need to threaten anyone directly. Asking to contact the bureau director was enough. Fong understood that a senior review could expose why his officers arrived beside Wang family representatives rather than independently. The retreat therefore protected the investigators as much as it protected Lu Hao from immediate detention. Students watching the reversal received a harsh lesson about how differently rules operated when powerful people faced other powerful people. Principal Jian, previously cautious, suddenly found the courage to condemn Wang Difa once the war god made the safe position obvious. Wang Difa discovered that serving the Wang family had given him influence only while their plan appeared likely to succeed. The moment they withdrew, he became the easiest person for the school to blame for the entire manufactured accusation. Fong began retreating verbally, insisting the situation could be reconsidered now that the war god had personally appeared. Lin Xuan ordered the investigators to leave and promised to speak directly with their director about what had happened. Third Uncle Wang also abandoned his accusations, suddenly describing the confrontation as a misunderstanding he wanted resolved peacefully. Wang Xiang tried to protest, but his uncle silenced him because challenging Lin Xuan would only make the family position worse. The investigators and Wang representatives withdrew under the same crowd that had watched them arrive with confidence. Principal Jian immediately turned his anger toward Wang Difa, whose testimony had nearly handed a student into a politically motivated detention. The principal announced that the school would review Wang Difa's teaching conduct and credentials after the incident. Wang Difa finally understood that the Wang family could walk away from the failure while leaving him to absorb the consequences. Once the officials dispersed, Lin Xuan approached Lu Hao and asked whether he was all right. The surrounding students expected gratitude, believing the war god had personally saved a helpless orphan from disaster. Lu Hao instead told Lin Xuan not to expect thanks because he had never asked the Lin family to protect him. The plaza fell silent again, shocked that any student would speak so coldly to the most respected fighter in Sanzhou. Lin Shuyao angrily demanded that Lu Hao show respect to the man who had just stopped his arrest. Her father raised one hand and silenced her before the argument could escalate. Rather than taking offense, Lin Xuan studied Lu Hao with an expression that seemed almost relieved. That reaction confused Lin Shuyao because she expected her father to punish disrespect, not quietly accept it. Lu Hao interpreted the calm differently, seeing another reminder that Lin Xuan knew something he still refused to explain. The war god had enough authority to stop the bureau with a few sentences, yet had remained silent about the old expedition for years. That contradiction mattered more to Lu Hao than any gratitude the crowd expected him to display. He did not know Lin Xuan had already recognized signs of the perfect extraction profession behind the public disguise. He also did not know the older fighter was carrying a hidden injury severe enough to make him cough dark blood. From Lu Hao's perspective, the Lin family's intervention remained another unanswered action attached to the same unresolved mystery. He therefore left without repairing the relationship, despite acknowledging privately that Lin Shuyao and her father had both helped. Strength would eventually let him ask questions without depending on favors, family debt, or another person's willingness to speak. That goal remained more important than proving himself right in front of classmates who would forget the plaza incident within days. Lu Hao watched them go without changing his position on the unresolved dungeon expedition. Stopping one corrupt arrest did not explain why Lin Xuan returned while Lu Yuanshan and Lu Qing disappeared. Lu Hao left the plaza with Xiao Depang, who apologized for accidentally revealing level 14 earlier. He dismissed the mistake and instead thanked Xiao Depang for publicly defending him when almost everyone else stayed silent. Whatever business motives Xiao Depang carried, Lu Hao remembered people who accepted real risk on his behalf. When asked about his next step, Lu Hao said he had no interest in repeating the beginner realm with weaker school teams. He needed more dangerous dungeons, stronger monsters, herbs, and resources capable of pushing infinite collection farther. Xiao Depang immediately mentioned that his family owned several dungeon scrolls and invited Lu Hao to look through them. Lu Hao asked what Xiao Depang wanted in return, rather than accepting the offer as simple generosity. The answer was straightforward. Xiao Depang wanted to join the clears and gain experience, while Lu Hao handled the dangerous work. Lu Hao jokingly reminded him that the public still considered him a level 6 gatherer with weak fire affinity. Lu Hao agreed to inspect the scrolls and followed him toward the Xiao family estate. A red convertible arrived, driven by Xiao Depang's older sister Xiao Shaoling, whose reckless speed made the trip memorable for all the wrong reasons. Xiao Shaoling was not merely a rich family's daughter, she had awakened an S-rank crafting talent called Heart of the Divine Smith. Even before awakening, her equipment had helped transform the Xiao family from a small workshop into a major local business. Her new talent gave her enormous potential, But high-purity materials remained the bottleneck restricting what she could forge. Nights at the estate, Xiao Depang went upstairs for dungeon scrolls, while Lu Hao wandered near a workshop filled with discarded ore. One dark red stone caught his attention because it had been refined but remained too contaminated for high-quality forging. Until that moment, Lu Hao had tested Infinite Collection mostly on plants and creatures, never on mineral material. He activated the skill on the ore and discovered a completely different extraction behavior. Instead of stealing life source, Infinite Collection pulled impurities out of the mineral itself. The process consumed energy at an extreme rate, forcing Lu Hao to spend money repeatedly just to continue refining one small piece. Mineral purification demanded far more energy than extracting ordinary plants, so Lu Hao immediately recognized the financial cost. The result justified that cost because worthless contaminated ore became a compact piece with dramatically higher purity. Black residue left the stone, while useful material condensed, showing that Infinite Collection could remove rather than steal source. That distinction expanded the system's meaning beyond combat growth and made crafting resources strategically important. Xiao Shaoling's workshop happened to be the perfect place to test the discovery because discarded ore existed in huge quantities. Her complaint about spending massive sums for only a few usable pieces gave Lu Hao a rough market benchmark. If he purified cheap scrap reliably, the difference between purchase price and finished value could finance thousands of extractions. He still concealed the ability because revealing a perfect source of high-purity material would immediately change how the Xiao family viewed him. The tiny crimson fragment was tossed back into the waste pile, leaving proof of his capability hidden in plain sight. Lu Hao intended to understand the market and the people involved before turning that discovery into another visible business. Dark residue leaked from the stone, while the remaining material shrank into a brilliant, translucent crimson fragment. The finished ore looked nothing like the useless scrap Xiao Shaoling had rejected. Lu Hao realized his ability could create value not only by harvesting living things, but by upgrading raw crafting resources. That discovery potentially connected him to smithing, equipment, and an entirely new source of income. Xiao Depang returned with a stack of scrolls, while Xiao Shaoling complained about the poor quality of the ore delivered to her workshop. She explained that even large batches produced only a few pieces pure enough for serious crafting. Lu Hao looked at the refined fragment in his hand and understood that his system might solve the exact problem limiting her talent. He did not reveal that capability yet, instead tossing the small purified piece back among the scrap pile. Xiao Depang proudly presented several low-level dungeon scrolls he believed were appropriate for 2 young awakeners. Lu Hao rejected the level 5 and level 10 options immediately because they offered nothing comparable to what he had already cleared. He searched for something with valuable minerals, stronger monsters, and enough difficulty to justify revealing more combat strength to Xiao Depang. A scroll labeled Mystic Mine caught his attention because the dungeon's monsters reached roughly level 20. Xiao Depang stared at him in disbelief when Lu Hao selected it as their next destination. From Xiao Depang's perspective, 2 publicly level 6 students entering that dungeon without heavy support was reckless. Lu Hao told him to bring the scroll to the professional association the next morning and left the estate. Meanwhile, students were spreading stories about Yan, the mysterious level 13 expert who saved Lin Shuyao. At the Wang estate, family head Wang Tianba punished his son for losing the trial ranking and failing to secure the martyr bonus points. Wang Xiang blamed Lu Hao, but his father cared only about results and threatened to cut him off if he remained behind. The humiliation hardened Wang Xiang's obsession, turning a school rivalry into something increasingly personal and dangerous. Across town, Lin Shuyao told her father about Yan and contrasted that mysterious hero with the Lu Hao she believed had abandoned her. Lin Xuan responded cryptically that the person she was searching for might already be closer than she realized. After dinner, the war god entered his study and examined an old photograph showing himself beside Lu Yuanshan and Lu Qing. His private reaction revealed that he understood far more about Lu Hao's awakening than he had admitted publicly. Lin Xuan suspected Lu Hao possessed a legendary perfect extraction profession capable of stealing talents from other sources. In Lin Xuan's private understanding, perfect professions were rare enough that ordinary school rankings could not measure their future ceiling. Extraction was especially dangerous because its strength depended on what sources the user could eventually reach. If Lu Hao learned to take talents from progressively stronger targets, normal class boundaries might become meaningless. That possibility explained why Lin Xuan looked relieved, rather than surprised when Lu Hao survived the beginner trial. It also deepened the danger surrounding the place where Lu Yuanshan and Lu Qing had disappeared. Lin Xuan's old photograph connected all three adults to the same unfinished event Lu Hao had been trying to understand. His hidden illness suggested the expedition had left consequences, even for the person who managed to return alive. Instead of telling Shu Yao everything, he pushed her toward continued training while privately measuring how quickly Lu Hao was changing. He believed peaceful obscurity might have protected Lu Hao if the boy truly remained a common gatherer. Once perfect extraction awakened, however, obscurity could only delay the larger conflict rather than erase it. That possibility frightened him because the unresolved expedition connected Lu Hao's family to a place dangerous even for top experts. A violent coughing fit produced dark blood, revealing that Lin Xuan himself was carrying a serious hidden injury. Whatever secret he protected, he believed Lu Hao needed to become stronger quickly before his own time ran out. Lu Hao knew none of that while returning to Old Wu's shop with hundreds of perfect medicinal liquids from the Mist Plains. The next stage of his growth would begin by converting those resources into money, access, and stronger dungeon opportunities. Old Wu opened the first dungeon essence bottle and immediately recognized a level of purity far beyond normal low-tier gathering. Lu Hao placed hundreds more bottles on the table, forcing the older man to reconsider the scale of what his former employee could produce. Old Wu could buy part of the stock himself, but the full batch was too valuable for his small shop to handle safely. The first-tier liquids numbered in the hundreds, far beyond the inventory. Old Wu normally moved through a neighborhood business. Several second-tier portions were even more valuable, because stronger medicine required rarer and purer ingredients. Old Wu's proposed buyer had the laboratories, cash, and distribution network to use the entire batch efficiently. Crow's rivalry with the Wang family also meant Lu Hao's sale could indirectly weaken the same group already targeting him. That political effect made the transaction more complicated than choosing whoever offered the highest immediate price. Old Wu warned that perfect purity itself could become evidence of an unusual talent if too many people traced the supply. Lu Hao therefore treated the meeting as both a financial opportunity and a test of whether Crow could keep information controlled. The nearly 2 million yuan already available gave him enough breathing room to avoid accepting a desperate offer. Money no longer represented comfort alone. It represented mana, extraction, access, and the ability to accelerate every future gain. That was why Lu Hao entered the professional association, looking for difficulty rather than searching for another safe payday. He proposed introducing Lu Hao to President Luo of the Crow Pharmaceutical Group, one of the few buyers with enough capital and distribution. Crow was competing directly with the Wang family's medicine business, turning Lu Hao's perfect liquids into strategic resources rather than simple inventory. Old Wu warned that revealing the source of such purity could attract every major faction in the region. Lu Hao accepted the risk carefully and asked him to arrange a private meeting for the following night. Between spirit liquid and monster materials, Lu Hao's available wealth climbed close to 2 million yuan. That money mattered because infinite collection could transform currency directly into energy, making financial growth part of combat growth. The next morning, Lu Hao entered the professional association, where adventurers gathered around teleportation gates and dungeon service counters. Xiao Depang was already waiting beside 3 freelance professionals he had hired to make the mystic mine run safer. Their leader, Fang Yan, was an experienced spear user who immediately questioned why 2 low-level students were joining a dangerous dungeon. A heavily built tank and a thin wind mage were even less polite, calling Lu Hao a liability they would have to protect. Xiao Depang solved the argument the way his family solved most problems, by offering the mercenaries more money. Fang Yan reluctantly agreed, but only if the team selected normal difficulty rather than attempting anything reckless. The dungeon offered several difficulty levels, with stronger settings, multiplying monster attributes along with experience and rewards. Normal mode was designed for competent parties near the dungeon's intended level, rather than 2 recently awakened students. Hard mode increased the burden enough that Wang Xiang brought family protectors and expensive equipment to attempt it safely. The upper modes pushed ordinary monster statistics into ranges closer to bosses from much higher level content. Because the dungeon barred entrance above its level cap, veteran experts could not simply overpower the hardest setting through raw levels. That restriction was why previous elite parties had failed, despite entering with complete roles and strong equipment. Xiao Depang hired professionals precisely because he understood those public records and wanted a controlled normal mode clear. Lu Hao evaluated the same information differently because his displayed level no longer represented his actual combat statistics. Infinite energy recovery also removed one of the largest risks that made prolonged high difficulty combat unsustainable for normal mages. The danger was real, but the reward multiplier meant every surviving kill advanced Lu Hao faster than a safer dungeon could. Choosing the upper difficulty therefore matched his current advantage, instead of simply serving as reckless bravado. Hell and nightmare settings were considered suicidal for ordinary teams restricted by the dungeon's level cap. Lu Hao listened without revealing that his real level and attributes already exceeded what anyone in the party believed. For a moment, he considered letting the professionals fight while he harvested behind them, repeating his earliest Mist Plains strategy. That option disappeared when Wang Xiang entered the association lobby with Xiao Hong and several Wang family protectors. Wang Xiang loudly identified Lu Hao and announced that anyone helping him would become an enemy of the Wang family. He threatened to cut cooperating adventurers off from the family's potion network and blacklist them throughout Sanzhou. The intimidation worked immediately, because freelancers could not easily survive without access to jobs, medicine, and local connections. The hired tank and wind mage left Xiao Depang's party without hesitation and moved toward Wang Xiang. They apologized to the Wang heir, making clear that their loyalty belonged to whichever side could threaten their livelihood. Fang Yan remained frozen between her agreement with Xiao Depang and the sick father whose treatment depended on her income. A Wang family protector warned that staying would destroy her freelance career and possibly bring trouble to her home. Lu Hao solved the dilemma by asking Xiao Depang to transfer party leadership. The moment control changed, Lu Hao removed Fang Yan from the team himself. She looked embarrassed, but relief outweighed anger because he had spared her from openly choosing against the Wangs. Wang Xiang interpreted the shrinking team as victory and repeated his blacklist order to everyone in the lobby. He expected Lu Hao to remain to low public level, while stronger students continued grinding toward the university exam. The association crowd joined the mockery, assuming no competent professional would now accept Xiao Depang's money. Lu Hao waited until Wang Xiang finished, then calmly told Xiao Depang they no longer needed anyone else. The statement sounded suicidal to everyone who believed the Mystic Mine required a coordinated level 20 team. Wang Xiang entered the dungeon first with his family's experts and selected hard difficulty to accelerate his own progress. Observers praised the decision and predicted his expensive gear would push him back toward the top student ranking. Lu Hao recorded the insult mentally, but did not waste time arguing with people who would soon be irrelevant to his growth. He and Xiao Depang traveled to the dungeon site outside the city, with only the Mystic Mine scroll between them. City guards watched the surrounding wild area, while a dark portal waited beneath the shadow of the mountain. Xiao Depang still assumed they would abandon the run or choose the safest possible setting without hired professionals. Lu Hao tore the scroll, opened the dungeon interface, and examined the available difficulty choices. Normal promised the easiest monsters, hard raised the danger, and the upper settings multiplied the challenge far beyond rookie expectations. Without hesitation, Lu Hao selected the most extreme option offered by the source interface. Xiao Depang barely had time to protest before teleportation light wrapped around both of them. Back at the association, the real-time board registered their entry and triggered immediate disbelief among nearby adventurers. People who had just mocked them now assumed the two students had either misclicked or chosen death out of frustration. Fang Yan felt guilty, wondering whether abandoning the party had pushed Xiao Depang into a reckless decision. Veterans remembered previous high-level teams failing badly on the same elevated difficulty and predicted a near-immediate emergency exit. Inside, Lu Hao and Xiao Depang appeared before a rusted iron gate leading into a vast underground tunnel. Weak lamps spaced along the wall's illuminated supports, abandoned ore and damp stone disappearing into darkness. The air smelled of sulfur, rust, and decay, while a distant metallic rhythm echoed from deeper inside the mine. Xiao Depang finally understood that Lu Hao had selected the dangerous setting deliberately rather than by mistake. He grabbed Lu Hao's arm and begged him to turn back before the first monster reached them. Lu Hao removed the hand and continued forward, saying they would never know whether the dungeon was manageable without testing it. A hunched figure soon appeared ahead, endlessly striking the stone with a mining tool. The creature turned with hollow eyes containing only eerie green light and charged as soon as it noticed intruders. Its inspection revealed it as a level 16 death miner, enhanced far beyond ordinary difficulty. Xiao Depang's body stiffened under the pressure, because one direct hit from the monster could easily kill him. Lu Hao accelerated instead of retreating and launched a burst fireball directly into the miner's chest. He closed the distance, through the smoke, struck with enhanced physical force, then followed with another explosive spell. The miner crashed into the cavern wall and died before it could land a meaningful attack. Party experience immediately pushed Xiao Depang upward, proving the risk carried enormous leveling rewards. Lu Hao harvested the corpse and gained strength along with red vein iron ore. The result confirmed that dungeon monsters could provide both combat growth and the mineral materials he wanted for future refinement. Xiao Depang stared at him until the disguise briefly flickered and exposed the level 14 he had seen after the school trial. This time the evidence was impossible to dismiss, because Lu Hao had just destroyed a nightmare-enhanced monster in front of him. Xiao Depang demanded an explanation, but Lu Hao told him to save the questions and keep moving. 4 more death miners appeared together, creating what should have been a deadly pull for 2 young students. Lu Hao answered with rapid burst fireballs, using overlapping explosions to eliminate the group before they entered striking range. The sheer experience rose dramatically, and Xiao Depang realized he was leveling faster than he ever had with paid carries. Infinite Collection harvested the corpses one after another, producing more strength and additional iron ore. A critical extraction also granted detection, a Tier 2 skill based on the miner's instinctive understanding of materials and targets. Lu Hao combined detection with enhanced vision and immediately tested it on one of the bodies. Detailed information appeared, including the miner's attributes, style, and dangerous mining pick strike. Detection showed the death miner's strength around 250, enough to make a direct hit genuinely dangerous. Its agility and spirit were much lower, creating an obvious mismatch Lu Hao could exploit from range. The monster's constitution also failed to match its attack power, so concentrated fire damage could kill it before melee contact. Mining pick strike reflected the creature's old labor, turning a familiar tool into its primary combat technique after death. The description suggested these miners had been trapped by a curse that forced them to continue working underground. That small piece of dungeon history explained their repetitive behavior and automatic hostility toward intruders. For Lu Hao, the lore mattered mainly because predictable behavior made large-scale pulling safer to plan. Detection converted hidden combat information into strategy before he committed energy or placed Xiao Depang in danger. The same skill could inspect ore veins, making it useful during quiet moments when no monsters were nearby. A single extraction had therefore improved both his fighting decisions and the profitability of the entire mine run. The strength value was high enough to crush Xiao Depang in a single clean hit, validating Lu Hao's long-range approach. At the same time, the miner's lower defenses made them vulnerable to his spirit-heavy fire damage. Its detection also promised enormous value outside combat, because it could identify minerals before Lu Hao spent energy refining them. The mine had already given him a new skill, better ore, and huge experience gains within the opening section. Xiao Depang, however, still felt useless, because Lu Hao was doing every meaningful part of the fighting. He admitted that standing behind an overwhelming carry felt less like teamwork and more like being a parasite. Lu Hao asked what ranged and movement skills his teammate possessed, instead of dismissing the concern. Xiao Depang explained that he could use rapid fire with his crossbow and a short evasive movement skill. Those abilities suggested a way to increase clearing speed without requiring Xiao Depang to deal serious damage. Lu Hao told him to run ahead, attract groups of monsters, and lead them back into prepared killing zones. Xiao Depang reacted exactly as expected, pointing out that a level 7 ranger pulling nightmare-enhanced miners sounded like suicide. Lu Hao countered with the reward survive the task, and Xiao Depang could outlevel Wang Xiang before anyone outside understood what happened. He also made clear that a teammate who contributed nothing would eventually lose his place in the party. Fear fought ambition for several minutes before Xiao Depang finally accepted the role. Soon the tunnels echoed with his desperate shouting, as a growing pack of undead miners chased him toward Lu Hao. Lu Hao waited until every monster entered range, then fired past Xiao Depang with precise timing. Burst fireballs landed throughout the pack, and repeated explosions prevented the miners from surrounding either student. By the time Xiao Depang collapsed near him, the pursuing group had become scorched corpses scattered across the tunnel. Another leveling light appeared, and the frightened ranger began realizing that the terrifying job was also the fastest opportunity of his life. Lu Hao checked his own experience, calculated how many more large pulls would be needed, and immediately ordered another run. Xiao Depang complained, but the speed of his growth had already made quitting much harder than continuing. The two students pushed deeper underground, turning the dungeon Wang Xiang used to isolate them into their most profitable training ground yet. Every successful pull also left Lu Hao with more bodies to extract, so combat speed directly increased his material and attribute income. The deeper tunnel walls showed richer mineral veins, confirming that the mystic mine could finance future system use as efficiently as herbs had. For the first time, Xiao Depang stopped asking whether they should leave and started asking how many monsters he should bring back. Xiao Depang's next pulls grew larger as his confidence improved, forcing him to use every movement trick available just to stay alive. Lu Hao treated Burst Fireball like an ordinary attack, something no normal mage with limited energy reserves could afford to do. Whenever his energy fell, the system converted money into fresh reserves and removed the downtime that normally controlled spellcasters. That cycle let him sustain damage output far above what his level alone suggested. Xiao Depang began measuring progress in levels instead of minutes, because every successful group kill moved his experience bar dramatically. Lu Hao also kept checking mineral veins between battles using detection to avoid wasting time on poor deposits. He found frost copper among the mine walls, a rarer ore useful for equipment built around agility. After another large pull, Lu Hao finally crossed the experience threshold and reached level 15. The level granted new storage space and additional free attribute points, both valuable for a gatherer carrying increasingly diverse loot. Xiao Depang reached level 9 soon afterward and stopped sounding completely terrified by the dangerous routine. Their rhythm became simple. Xiao Depang flushed monsters from side tunnels, while Lu Hao created a lethal firing lane. After each battle, Lu Hao harvested corpses as minerals, while his teammate recovered enough to run again. The method carried them more than a kilometer into the mine, before an explosion suddenly shook the entire underground passage. Dust and stone fell from the ceiling as Lu Hao realized the blast had come from the direction Xiao Depang had just entered. For the first time in several pulls, concern replaced calculation because the ranger might have been caught before reaching safety. Lu Hao sprinted toward the blast site and found Xiao Depang stumbling through the dust, burned and terrified but still alive. Several new creatures followed him, shorter and more withered than the ordinary death miners. Detection identified them as level 18 mine blasters, with unusually high spirit and explosive combat abilities. Their physical defenses and agility were lower, but planted explosives could produce enough damage to kill either student if triggered cleanly. Lu Hao stayed outside their preferred range and answered with repeated burst fireballs before they could establish a minefield. The tunnel filled with explosions until every blaster and accompanying miner collapsed. Xiao Depang explained that one hidden charge had nearly taken his foot off before he noticed the placement pattern. Lu Hao examined the monsters and concluded that their greatest strength was also predictable once detection exposed their mechanics. Without prepared explosives, the blasters were far less dangerous than their terrifying spirit attribute suggested. Its infinite collection pulled spirit points and a denser ore, called fused iron, from their bodies. The material was worth more than ordinary red vein iron, and had better properties for stronger weapons. Then a critical extraction produced detonation, a Tier 2 fire skill based on the blaster's explosive specialty. The spell allowed Lu Hao to condense fire, hide it temporarily, and trigger a large radius blast later. Its donation cost roughly 200 energy, far more than the smaller fire spell Lu Hao had been spamming. Its cooldown lasted around half a minute, preventing him from laying dozens instantly, even with unlimited purchased recovery. The blast radius reached roughly 50 meters, making careless placement dangerous to Xiao Dapeng as well as nearby monsters. That combination of cost, delay, and scale turned preparation into the central requirement for using it effectively. Mine blasters had relied on planted explosives for the same reason, controlling where the victim stepped before triggering damage. Lu Hao copied the concept rather than copying their crude behavior, combining the skill with his knowledge of movement lanes. The narrow mine tunnels naturally concentrated enemies, making them ideal terrain for a delayed area explosion. Xiao Dapeng's speed could supply the missing piece by bringing large groups into a location Lu Hao chose beforehand. This was the first time their roles formed a real combat system, rather than one student attacking while the other received experience. The strategy eventually transformed an impossible horde into a target that could be destroyed through preparation instead of raw endurance. It consumed far more energy than Burst Fireball and carried a longer cooldown, but its area damage was dramatically higher. Lu Hao immediately saw that detonation was not meant for ordinary one-on-one fighting. Its real value would appear when enemies could be pulled into a prepared zone and destroyed together. Xiao Dapeng recovered from the near miss and insisted he could continue because the leveling speed remained impossible to ignore. Lu Hao warned him to watch for planted explosives, then sent him forward again while studying the mine's layout. The new skill changed his thinking from direct bombardment toward controlling terrain before a fight even began. Back at the professional association, students continued arriving to choose field dungeons after finishing the novice trial. Lin Shu Yao entered with her usual female teammates and an older relative experienced enough to serve as their front line. She had little interest in Wang Shang's hard mode run, because the missing Yan still occupied most of her attention. A younger acquaintance told them that Lu Hao and Xiao Dapeng had entered the Mystic Mine without hired professionals. The news already sounded dangerous, because both boys publicly appeared to be around level 6. Then she revealed the difficulty shown on the association board, and the entire group went silent. Zhao Ji called the decision suicidal, while the priest struggled to understand how they had remained inside for hours. Lin Shu Yao interpreted it as another reckless choice from the same boy she believed had abandoned her in the Mist Plains. Her older relative dismissed Lu Hao as someone mistaking luck for ability and expected the dungeon to punish him eventually. Only Su Wan remained uncertain because every encounter with Lu Hao had contradicted the weak information shown on his status. She remembered his dense aura, the strange drained corpses, and the resemblance between him and the mysterious Yan. Those clues still lacked proof, but they were becoming harder for her to ignore. Inside the mine, Lu Hao remained unaware that another rumor about him was spreading through the association. He focused on harvesting more than 100 pieces of iron-related ore from the corridors they had already cleared. The minerals also represented future cooperation with Xiao Shaoling if Lu Hao chose to reveal his purification capability. As they advanced, the narrow tunnel suddenly opened into a massive underground quarry, hundreds of meters across. Rotting scaffolds, abandoned carts, and broken platforms surrounded a central floor crowded with undead miners. There were not dozens of enemies below, but an enormous horde large enough to overwhelm sustained direct fire. Xiao Dapeng immediately recognized the chamber as the most dangerous section of the Mystic Mine. Disturbing one cluster could awaken the rest and turn every exit into a moving wall of undead bodies. Lu Hao's infinite energy would not matter if hundreds of enemies reached him from every direction at once. Instead of entering the quarry, he studied the narrow passage connecting it to the tunnel behind them. That choke point could convert an uncontrollable horde into a dense column forced through one predictable route. Destination gave him exactly the tool needed to exploit that geometry. Lu Hao began planting compressed fire points along the tunnel floor at regular intervals. Each invisible trap consumed energy, forcing him to refill repeatedly while waiting through the skill's cooldown. Xiao Dapeng watched the preparation and finally understood that Lu Hao intended to pull the entire quarry rather than fight small groups. The ranger's face went pale before Lu Hao even explained his role. For roughly half an hour, Lu Hao continued laying trap after trap until the kill corridor stretched deep through the passage. The source described dozens of hidden explosive points, spaced along roughly 100 meters of the narrow tunnel. Lu Hao could not place them all at once because detonation's cooldown forced a deliberate preparation rhythm. Each trap also drained enough energy that repeated system refills became part of the setup cost. That investment made sense, only if Xiao Dapang could bring a large enough horde through the exact corridor. The quarry itself held far too many monsters for Lu Hao to bombard individually before eventually being surrounded. Wooden scaffolds and abandoned minecarts created obstacles that could slow the ranger if he chose a poor escape route. Xiao Dapang therefore had to memorize his path before provoking enough undead to wake the entire central area. His task was not to damage them, only to remain visible and irritating long enough to keep their attention. A premature movement skill could leave him trapped later, so timing mattered more than raw speed. Lu Hao remained near the tunnel mouth because entering the quarry would ruin the advantage created by the choke point. As the first groups woke, the undead response spread outward until green eyes appeared across the enormous chamber. The number-chasing Xiaoping grew from a manageable pack into a moving crowd that filled the available ground. Every extra monster increased the reward, while also shrinking the margin for one mistake during the retreat. Xiao Dapang stopped attacking and committed completely to running once the horde density became impossible to control. Behind him, miners collided with carts and each other, but continued following through the same narrowing exit. The quarry floor began trembling before Lu Hao could even see his teammate returning through the tunnel mouth. That vibration gave him a final timing reference for the approaching mass hidden by dust and darkness. When Xiao Dapang finally appeared, his face had lost all color and his breathing was already ragged. Lu Hao still waited because detonating too early would kill only the front ranks and leave the rest alive. The ranger crossed the marked safe point with the leading undead close enough to strike if he slowed. Only then did Lu Hao activate the prepared chain, rather than using another ordinary burst fireball. The explosions propagated along the packed formation, allowing each blast to catch enemies already compressed by the tunnel walls. Rock fragments and broken supports amplified the destruction beyond the fire damage alone. Even Xiao Dapang, already outside the main trap line, was thrown by the pressure wave and barely recovered his landing. The tunnel disappeared behind smoke so completely that neither student knew the final result for several seconds. When visibility returned, the corridor was blocked by bodies instead of charging monsters. The plan had converted preparation time, money, and one extremely dangerous pull into an experience payout, impossible through normal grinding. Xiao Dapang's multiple level-ups were the direct reward for accepting a role that had terrified him only hours earlier. Hao's own jump to level 17 confirmed that the high difficulty multiplier justified the risk he had chosen at entry. The surviving silence after the chain reaction also made the single remaining movement near the corpse field impossible to miss. Between placements, he ordered Xiao Dapang to mine nearby ore, instead of standing around complaining. The irony was impossible to miss. The supposedly useless gatherer was managing both the battlefield and the resource extraction. When the final trap was ready, Lu Hao told Xiao Dapang to enter the quarry and attract as much of the horde as possible. The ranger asked whether Lu Hao wanted dozens, hundreds, or every monster in sight. Lu Hao's answer made clear that the entire strategy depended on concentrating the maximum number inside the trapped tunnel. Xiao Dapang stared into the quarry, knowing one stumble would bury him beneath undead miners before any spell could help. Then he remembered the levels already gained and accepted the risk with a mixture of fear and greed. He slipped down among the abandoned structures and began drawing attention with ranged attacks and movement. One cluster woke, then another, until the quarry seemed to come alive around him. Hundreds of hollow green eyes turned toward the same target as the undead began converging. Xiao Dapang fired only enough to keep their attention, then turned and sprinted for the prepared passage. The ground started vibrating under the number of bodies chasing him through the quarry. From Lu Hao's position, the distant rumble grew until it sounded like an approaching landslide. Xiao Dapang finally burst into the tunnel entrance with no breath left for the dramatic screaming that had accompanied earlier pulls. Behind him came a wall of decayed bodies, rusted tools, and glowing eyes packed tightly by the narrowing route. Lu Hao waited, measuring distance rather than firing early and scattering the formation. Xiao Dapang crossed the final safe point and threw himself toward the side of the passage. Lu Hao waited for the formation, then triggered detonation. The first hidden fire point erupted beneath the horde, and the next explosion followed before the shockwave could fade. A chain of blasts raced down the tunnel, turning the prepared corridor into a continuous furnace. Stone fragments became shrapnel, supports snapped, and the mountain itself seemed to shake around the two students. The shockwave caught Xiao Depang and hurled him through the air, even though he had already cleared the main kill zone. His agility let him twist before landing, saving him from a serious impact against the wall. For several seconds, neither student could see through the smoke, dust, and burning debris filling the corridor. Then the explosion stopped and the tunnel fell silent. The horde that should have overwhelmed them had been reduced to a long field of charred corpses. Xiao Depang stared into the tunnel, unable to process the scale of what one prepared spell sequence had accomplished. Lu Hao rose multiple levels from the enormous experience payout, while Xiao Depang gained even more because his starting level was lower. The ranger's progression jumped so violently that he finally connected the disaster in the mist plains to Lu Hao. There had never been a hidden elite team clearing the beginner realm. The same person standing beside him had been the one emptying entire zones before everyone else arrived. Lu Hao ignored the revelation and checked his own status, confirming that the quarry wipe had pushed him to level 17. His inventory capacity expanded again, and more free attribute points became available for later allocation. Xiao Depang reached level 13 and called following Lu Hao the best business decision he had ever made. Lu Hao answered by looking toward the corpses, because the experience was only one part of what the horde represented. Hundreds of fresh bodies meant hundreds of extraction opportunities and a mountain of ore still waiting beyond the smoke. As Xiao Depang stepped forward toward the loot, Lu Hao suddenly sensed that the battle was not completely finished. Xiao Depang stepped toward the corpse field first, eager to inspect loot after surviving the largest pull of his life. Lu Hao felt the atmosphere shift before his teammate reached the nearest body and shouted an immediate warning. A massive shadow surged from the darkness, proving that something powerful had survived the chain explosions. Its long tail snapped toward Xiao Depang's head with enough force to whistle through the underground air. Lu Hao activated haste and closed the distance while forming another burst fireball in the same movement. The spell struck the shadow before the tail connected, forcing the creature backward and changing the attack's angle. Its tail smashed into stone beside Xiao Depang instead of his skull, scattering sharp fragments across the floor. Xiao Depang reacted with his movement skill and slid away before the surviving monster could correct the strike. Lu Hao used detection only long enough to recognize that this was not another ordinary miner hiding beneath the smoke. The survivor was the Overseer, the leader boss controlling the deepest section of the Mystic Mine. Surviving the prepared detonation field already proved its durability exceeded the mobs that had been erased around it. Lu Hao refused to give the boss time to exploit that durability or separate him from Xiao Depang. He rushed inside the creature's recovery window and drove an enhanced punch directly into its body. The impact launched the Overseer backward, interrupting its attempt to swing the whip-like tail again. Lu Hao immediately followed the physical strike with another burst fireball before the boss could regain stable footing. Fire engulfed the airborne creature and carried it farther through the dusty tunnel. The Overseer crashed down with a heavy impact, its massive body finally losing the movement that had triggered Lu Hao's warning. For a brief second, Xiao Depang stayed at distance, waiting to see whether the boss would rise again. The fallen Overseer did not rise again. The party interface confirmed the kill and identified the fallen enemy as the Overseer leader boss. The victory awarded another large burst of experience on top of the enormous quarry clear they had just completed. Xiao Depang stared at the boss corpse, realizing the nightmare run had carried him from a frightened rookie into the top student range. Lu Hao remained focused, because the fight had also proven his new strategy could handle threats that survived raw area damage. Detonation erased crowds. Haste, physical power, and burst fireball gave him answers when a stronger individual remained. Xiao Depang's pulling and evasive movement had also become genuinely useful, rather than decorative experience sharing. The partnership that began as a rich classmate, hiring help now had a clear division of risk, information, and combat responsibility. Outside the mine, people still believed Wang Xiang's blacklist had left both boys without a viable team. It's inside, the two students had turned the Wong family's isolation tactic into faster leveling. It's richer. It's and a cleared leader boss. It's Lu Hao had entered the dungeon looking for stronger sources. It's and the mystic mine had already delivered skills, levels. It's improved. It's at the source's final stopping point. Lu Hao and Xiao Depang stood beside the defeated overseer after clearing the mine's deadliest encounter.